Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Mike Washington. Mike is a Marine veteran who, after surviving his own suicide attempt, became a mental health advocate and a licensed therapist. He's here today to talk about being a wingman for each other in our times of need. And before we get started, I do want to mention to the listeners that this episode will discuss topics like suicide and the use of firearms. And if any of that is not going to sit right with you, I'd like to invite you right now to, just turn the episode off, no hard feelings with that, tune back into the next episode. Also, while we will be talking about firearms, I just want to make it clear that the podcast has been and continues to be strictly non-political. So we don't be discussing political topics as far as, gun control and all that kind of stuff. The reality is that there are veterans out there who own guns, and that's just a reality. And regardless of anyone's opinion about that fact, we're here today to discuss how we can help those veterans not become a statistic. And so with all of that out of the way, I'd like to welcome you to the show, Mike. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this program.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the listeners who may not be familiar with you and your story, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was the healthy baby of Hawaii in 1965, which I think is why you have me on the podcast, for that celebrity that I bring as healthy baby of Hawaii. So you're welcome. I moved to Los Angeles when I was 11. That's where I joined the Marine Corps and spent 7 years on active duty in finance, of all things. Went in open contract and, this, okay, here you go. This is where you're going. Like, I had no idea that the Marine Corps had Marines who paid people. I just never thought of that. But 7 years later was like, it's time to get out. I can't do this anymore. And I became a firefighter in San Diego County. And I did that for 5 years. And then I moved up here to Seattle, and I was a Seattle firefighter for 27 years, retiring in 2020, December 31st, 2020. In the meantime, I stayed in the Marine Corps Reserves and I was part of the Light Armored Infantry Unit, went to Desert Storm, fought with them, and then went into the counterintelligence field where I did 3 more tours in counterintelligence before retiring in 2004. In my time in the Seattle Fire Department, for 25 years, I was in the peer support business. We have what was called a peer support team, and it was made up of trained individuals in the fire department who would help other firefighters as they go through their challenges. And it can be challenges on the job, off the job, whatever it is, whatever's just challenge their ability to work and be their best version of themselves. So I was fully immersed in that. I knew the signs to look for and everything else. And after I retired, my daughter went in the Army, and she was a linguist for a little bit. And my son went in the Marine Corps, and he was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2008. And for me, I think that was when the final crack in the dam just really split open for me. And growing up, I'm 60 years old right now. And growing up when I did, all my coaches, mentors, male mentors were World War II, Vietnam, Korea veterans. These are the crew cut guys. These are the commandant of the Marine Corps when I went in was a World War II veteran. And consequently, all of my staff NCOs and stuff, Vietnam, Korea. And these are guys who didn't talk about their feelings. And, when you played football as a kid, it was rub dirt on it, water breaks are for punks, all that kind of stuff. And, you really take that to heart, and that's okay. This is the person I'm supposed to be, especially as a Marine or a firefighter. I'm supposed to be the tough guy. And then the other thing that we do in our lines of work as first responders and veterans is we compare ourselves to those people who came before us. So certainly when the first hints of PTSD started to happen to me, as I look back and review the tapes, I didn't know it at the time, happened after Desert Storm. And I was like, well, what's going on here? And certainly what I saw in Desert Storm does not match Vietnam or Korea or World War II. And so what do you got to complain about? Well, the reality is that, we're a product of all these different events in our lives. I'm a big proponent of 0 to 18. And so whatever happened to you before you showed up on the yellow footprints of anybody's basic boot camp, college campus, even whatever it is, inform how you are and how you can react to things as a young adult without any knowledge or information, right? So, having been in a foster home in my first few months of life, alcohol, violence in my neighborhood, in my house, molestation happened to me as a child, all these things that happened before I even joined the Marine Corps and become who I am now, you just stuff that away. Didn't happen, didn't happen. Well, of course they happened. And they inform on how you are going to have a life view of what's happening to you and the world around you. So then compound that with what I start seeing in the fire department and what I start working with in the fire department. And then compound that with, losing my son. And you have a 50-year perfect storm brewing that comes to a head and ends up with me on a bridge, ready to jump over. And I was on a bridge because I didn't have a firearm, and it's nothing to do with con firearms. It's just not my culture. I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up in a city and then later in the suburbs, so it just wasn't my culture. I love to shoot. Marine Corps taught me how to shoot, and shooting is one of the more cathartic things that for some people getting out there, right? Sight alignment, sight picture, breathing, squeezing the trigger, controlling that explosion and making that projectile go 200 meters downrange exactly where you want it to. That's awesome. And what makes it awesome is that the next time when you do the exact same thing and you throw it into the ring, and it's like, what happened here? And then so you got to, get your mind and body and get it back in sync, try it again. But I just say that I just didn't have a firearm, and so I was going to do a bridge. And honestly, what brought me back as I was ready to go over was, it felt like somebody was pulling my shirt a little bit, like it got hung up on something. And it's in the middle of a bridge where there's no obstructions. And I heard my son's voice that, "Dad, your story doesn't end here. There's work for you to do." I heard it as clear as I heard you talking to me a second ago, and as clear as what you're hearing me. And that was it. That was it. Now, there was no light, no clouds opened up and a ray of light. There was, none of that. And I walked off that bridge, and I haven't gone back to that suicidal ideation. The film that we made, the Wingman film, kind of represents that in that moment of just supreme stress, anxiety, depression, sadness, despair, we, you, me, everybody who's listening right now, we have the ability to be that person for that person. And it's nothing, amazing or, any training or anything like that. It's just being a friend and being there. Say, okay, let's make a plan. Okay, where are we going from here? Let me hold your weapon for you. Let me get you to the next step. Let's do this. It's like CPR. It's like CPR.
Right.
Consequently, after that, I wasn't suddenly fixed walking off the bridge. I had no idea where to go. And I went to a program called Save a Warrior. And that was an amazing, transformative 5-day retreat. And a big part of it, though, was, okay, when you're done here, you need to have follow-up stuff. You don't just walk out of here and you're cool back out in general population. So I went to the vet center, and that's where I started getting my therapy, was at the vet centers. And for those of you in podcast land who are unfamiliar with vet centers, they're adjuncts of the VA, started by Vietnam veterans who were not getting the mental health service that they needed after the unique experiences of Vietnam. So they're storefront, they're in neighborhoods. The one I go to here in Tacoma, I think there's a pizzeria on one side and a chiropractor on the other. So, it's non-threatening. You're not going to the fortress on the hill and dealing with big VA. It's a combat veteran, military sexual assault, or some other kind of traumatic incident that happened in your service is what it takes. And you have, social groups in there, you have therapy groups in there, individual counseling. For me, that was the biggest thing. And then after I went through there, as I was getting close to my retirement in the fire department and as a peer support person, our mental health professional said, "Mike, you should consider getting your Master of Social Work and becoming a therapist." And I'd never given it any thought. And so okay, whatever you say, doc. And got my MSW in 2019, and I've been working with first responders, work a lot with veterans as well since then.
Well, that's amazing, the progression that your life and your career has taken from the beginnings that you had and everything that you endured during your childhood, and then working through your time in the military and losing your son, which I'd like to offer my condolences for that. That's never an easy thing to do. No parent should ever have to bury a child, but that's the unfortunate realities of war, is that this type of thing happens. It happened to my family as well. I lost my brother in Afghanistan, and we lose people, and good people too, at that, and it is unfortunate. I do want to circle back to something that you were talking about before, about how we compare ourselves to the people who came before us, the World War II, Korea, Vietnam era guys who endured a lot of crap. Let's just face it, they went through a lot of stuff. Talk about the guys storming the beaches of Normandy. Like those guys had some brass balls going in and basically walking into a wall of machine gun fire. That's crazy if you think about it, what they had to go through. But at the same time, if you think about any traumatic experience that anybody takes place, whether you're storming the beaches of Normandy, you are fighting in Baghdad, or you're losing a child, right? Any of those things, they're traumatic, and they're going to affect people in one way or another. And I've said this before on the podcast, I don't care if someone drowns in 5 feet of water or they drown in 100 feet of water. At the end of the day, both of those people drowned. You can't say one drowned worse than the other. They're both drowned. They both were terrible. They both were traumatic. They both were awful, right? We don't need to put labels and compare and say, oh, this one's worse or this one's better. There's no good traumatic experience that you can go through, right? So then fast forward a little bit, and you're standing on this bridge, and you feel this tug on your sleeve, basically pulling you back off the bridge, and your son's voice, basically saying, your job is not over here. Your story doesn't end here. That has to be a pretty powerful moment. We all have these moments in life that, like, you'll remember it to the day you die. Like, you'll never forget these types of things. I got to imagine that's one of them. As you're walking off that bridge, like, what's going through your mind at that point? Are you like amazed that you're still here? As you were walking onto that bridge, you're basically thinking to yourself that this is going to be the last journey I'm taking, and now you're walking off. What's going through your mind at that point?
I was asking myself, I haven't thought about that a lot, but I do recall, like what just happened, and not in terms of my son. It's funny, that portion of it was pretty anticlimactic in the bigger things, which is weird to say that because it was so matter of fact, like, Dad, what are you doing? Get up, you got stuff to do. Like, go do your thing. Oh, right. Okay. But I was like, how did I end up here? What the hell? And again, you assess yourself, you look yourself in the mirror, and as a peer support person, anybody who displayed the same symptoms that I did, the anger, the depression, the things that I hid really well, super good, because nobody knew about it, and as you deal with that, I'm walking off the bridge and I'm going, how did I get here? I hit the wall so fast. I do a lot of us speaking around the country, and I use this video of this British battleship in World War II, and I use that metaphor of all of us feeling like we're a battleship, right? We got big guns, we're armored, we can't sink, but here's this battleship, has a list on it. It's taking some torpedo hits, and they're videoing it, and suddenly it just slowly capsizes, and then it just blows up. It just blows up, the HMS Barham. And it's a famous video, and I liken what I and many others, I just lost a very good friend in the police department to suicide just the other day. And, we suddenly find ourselves in this spot and we have no answers. I'm there to help everybody else, but I can't look at myself in the mirror and go, dude, what's going on with you? You need some help. And I said, okay, I don't know where really to go from here. The other thing I was involved in heavily was Team Rubicon. Have you heard of Team Rubicon?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jake Wood and my son were good friends. They were in the same outfit, went to School of Infantry together, were in 2-7 together. And so I was part of that from the early days and was doing a lot of work with them. And I remember this one guy, and it was in Moore, Oklahoma, where I was having one of my episodes, and it's just that I also compared it to Tom Hanks' character in Saving Private Ryan, Captain Miller, when he has that collapse, and I was having one of those, and they were coming more frequently. I couldn't predict them, and they were interspersed with anger and just rage and sadness all together. And one of the guys there, he was a soldier, and he goes, hey, have you heard of a thing called Save a Warrior? And I'm going, no. He says, maybe, you should check that out. And I thought he was saying as maybe a helper there, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I'm totally into doing that. Okay, cool. So I call him up and I make the connection, says, yeah, peer support guy in the fire department. I'm all about this, ready to go down and help out some GIs, man. That's where I'm at. He said, okay, cool. Come down here. And, it was in Malibu, and we'll take a look at it. And I get down there, I'm, fully prepared to jump in and go, okay, peer support, this is what we're doing. And I get down there and I'm talking to this one doctor, and, we're talking, and I was that frog in the low heat, in the pot, I'm just sitting there going like, oh, next thing I know, wait a minute, I'm not a helper here, I'm a participant here. And after I realized that, I'm like, holy shit, man, okay, all right, man, here I am. And then, like I said, after that, it's making that phone call to the vet center, which, when I made the call, I was like, yeah, man, I'm Mike Washington. I'm brand new, man. I'm feeling good about myself, man. New outlook on life. This isn't help. This is assistance. This is whatever I was telling myself. I make the call. This is Mike Washington. I'm here to see a therapist. All right, Mike, come Monday at 9:00. You're going to see Audrey. Awesome. All right, click, man. I'm just, feeling really good about myself. Come about 8:00 on Monday morning, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really need to go. I'm feeling pretty good, right? You know what? Just go. And I know exactly where this place is. I've been in that area 100 times if I've been there once. I missed the off ramp twice.
Yeah.
Avoidance, anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And so I get there, I park, I'm in the car, just going, all right, just go in there. I go in there and I'm stressed, man. I'd rather be clearing a room than be in there. And I'm sitting down and I can't find a chair that's not having my back to the entrance or back to anything. I need my back to the wall. And I'm not that guy. I am not that guy. I'm not the, I need to have a, but on that moment in time, I was stressed out. There was a garbage truck outside that had a dumpster that was just like they hired him to go out there and just stress me out. And I was ready to bolt. I'm ready to walk out of there. And there's somebody arguing at the counter. I'm just like, okay, abort. And then Audrey comes out, Mike? I'm like, And I raise my hand all sheepish. Hi, I'm Audrey. Come on back here to my office. And she goes, it's right this way. So I'm walking first. Now she's behind me and there's an open door. And I stop at the threshold and I kind of, look inside a little bit. And if I had a frag and an M4, I would have cleared that room first. And she goes, what are you looking for? I went, I was just like, she goes, get in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then we start, and, a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth. And, what Save a Warrior taught me was there was a lot of stuff on my train before I went to war and before I did firefighter stuff that should have been dealt with, a long time ago, but I didn't even have knowledge of it. And like I said, when we compare ourselves to these other generations, I mean, the greatest generation, right? How do you compare to that? The fact of the matter is they were human beings just like us. And storming Normandy is no different than when we were lined up getting ready to go into Kuwait with 80% casualties predicted in my unit. Now, it didn't happen, right? Absolutely. But for the 146 Americans who died in that 4 days, is no different than somebody who died on Omaha Beach. And go ask their families, So I've done a lot of studying on the World War II generation, civilian and military. And the more you look into it and get past the nostalgia of it, the more you find out that these guys were exactly like us. On the home front, 5,000 strikes, work stoppages, and walkouts for wages, for better hours, just like people do now, right? People were forging coupons and food coupons and sugar and tire. People were stealing tires like it was going out of style because rubber was being sanctioned. And so just like people do today with COVID and everything else, we look at it and go, man, how come we can't be like that generation? They did it too. You had guys desert, after D-Day on the move into Germany, GIs were deserting left and right. They were like, why am I going into the Hurtgen Forest again when there's a really nice French town we just liberated with French wine and French girls? I'm out of here. And the worst thing that's going to happen is that I might spend a day or two in the stockade, then they're going to just send me back to my unit. Well, Eisenhower finally had to shoot Eddie Slovik was the lone deserter who was shot in the U.S. military during World War II. But at the high point, they predicted that it was as many as 15,000 GIs who were not where they were supposed to be, because they're human. They're like, and some of these guys have been to North Africa, Italy, landed in France, and they're just like, I've had my fill. I've had my fill. GIs in the Pacific didn't have a whole lot of places to run to, but on Okinawa, there was over 12,000 psychiatric cases during that 82-day battle. 12,000, which I get.
I get it too. Yeah. I mean, that type of experience is intense. It's traumatic, and these people are going to have a tough time dealing with some of that stuff, if not dealt with appropriately. And back then, the mental health care was not anything near what it is today. And so I think, yeah, they were very much the same as us. I absolutely agree with everything you said there. Yeah, they're human, and you can't change it. Like, humans are human. You can't change that, right? It doesn't matter if 100 years has passed. We're human, and we're gonna react similarly to similarly traumatic situations. Whether it's prolonged or it's a one-off deal, we're going to end up having similar reactions to these types of things. I think the only difference really between them and current generations are the fact that they didn't have as much mental health treatment available, the understanding of PTSD and all that type of stuff, and the treatments that they did have available were kind of piss poor at best in some cases, right? So
we love that, like I said, that nostalgia that they went and won the war, came home and built this great America, which absolutely happened. I mean, that's I'm for those of you listening in podcast land, I am not trying to tear down your grandfather and great grandfather. They went out there, and your grandmother Rosie the Riveter is documented. Just amazing things were done, but it cost them. Alcoholism, domestic violence in the household by many of these veterans when they came back. And a lot of their stuff wasn't just World War II. It's what happened in the Depression. Some of the deprivations that happened for some of these people in the Depressions, and, it's a human condition. We are humans. And so at the end of the day, if we can crack the code of how we help first responders and veterans, who are a tough group to get into, I say we have a great tool set to help just the individuals, the civilians in life who are going through those crises, and say, man, we cracked this nut over here. These ones are going to be a lot easier now that we've done that. So,
right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your Wingman project, the video series that you've worked on. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just for the listeners, the project basically centers around veteran suicide awareness. And so what was the inspiration for the project? Obviously, you had your own personal history with suicide, and tell people what the message is behind it and everything like that.
Well, I'm involved with a group called Everytown for sensible gun laws. And it's exactly that. It's like, let's put our guns away. Let's have them in safes and, things like that, right? And Tony Cope, who was the director of this project and the Myriad video company that he owns, he wanted to do more. He's been involved as a witness and a victim of a couple of active shooting. So he's seen, that up close, and he's, has a very big space in his heart for veterans. And he says, man, this veteran suicide thing, how do we work with it? What do we do? And guns are typically what veterans use, right? And same with officers and things like that. That's our tool in the trade. There's some significance to that. So he wanted to make this video, and he asked me to be the technical advisor on it. And I was like, oh, okay. And because I know what it's like to be in that dark space. And so that's what I was going to speak to help the actors work through that. It's about a 6-minute film, and the actors were tremendous. Neither of them veterans. The crew was just terrific. They really leaned forward into this project. And my role there was just to give some technical advice about what it was like to be in that space as those storms come and go. And then when that storm comes so strong that you're ready to go. And that this veteran not only had a case, but he had a friend. He had a wingman that he made a promise to that says, when I get to the space, you will be my last call. I will give you this last chance to come and talk me off this ledge, or whatever the case may be. So he makes a call. The friend honors that commitment, comes in and sits with them, talks with them, and eventually gets him to mental health treatment. And that's essentially what it is. And what it's trying to do, what I hope that it does, is I hope that it makes us as the average person understand that we have a role to play. We can help. And we're not asking you to be a therapist. We're not asking you to do any of that. We're just asking you to be in the moment. So when this crisis comes, this person is not going to be there alone and make that permanent to that temporary problem, but to get them to that next step. And what we found in VA and other suicidal studies is that person who survives that initial attempt, if you will, doesn't go back. But sometimes they do. Sometimes people are, they're going to come back, But oftentimes, like myself, like I said, my life didn't change when I walked off the bridge. I still had the same things I was dealing with, but I got through the storm. I was just like, oh my God, okay, yeah, that's not what I'm going to do. And so the idea is to let people know that you too have that power. It's CPR, it's citizen CPR, but on a mental health wise. When we have somebody do CPR, we're not saying, okay, we need you to start a line. Okay, get it back of the rig with us. We're gonna, put some epi in this guy. We're not asking you to do any of that. We're just asking you to do this. We'll take over from there. The professionals will take it from you. And if you need help, raise your hand and call somebody else. Say, I need some help here. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's the idea of the film.
Yeah, and it was well made. I watched the film and I enjoyed how it was put together. And I like the analogy that you make to CPR with this, because, it may sound like a scary thing, a big undertaking to say, hey, we want you to be there for somebody. And it's like, well, I don't know that I'm the right person. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to with this person. Just like with CPR, we're not asking someone to perform open heart surgery on someone. We're just looking for you to provide the necessary care to get this person to a place where the professionals can take over and do the deep dive and do the more invasive treatments to this individual. So if you see someone collapse, whether it's in the grocery store or at your house or wherever the case may be, you can provide that temporary care, the CPR, to keep the heart pumping. Essentially, that's what you're trying to do until the EMTs show up. They can provide a little bit more than you're able to do. They're also not at the point where they're doing the open heart surgeries either, but they can continue the care until the person gets to the hospital, where then the doctors will take over and do, whatever is left to be done. And in this case, the way the video was, the guy's buddy shows up and he's there with him and he stays with him until he can secure the firearm, until he can get the guy help that he needs and get him around that corner. He wasn't a therapist. He wasn't, he wasn't there to do invasive mental health counseling. He was there to keep the guy alive. And essentially that's what CPR does. It keeps the person alive long enough to get them the professional help that they need.
Exactly.
It was well done. And I think all of us, whether you're a veteran, whether you're a first responder or not, quite frankly, all of us can do just that. We can do enough to keep somebody from going over the edge, taking that leap like you almost did and thankfully did not, from pulling the trigger or from whatever else people may do. We can be there for people. And sometimes all it really takes is just literally just being there, just sitting there and talking with the person. And and that is big and arduous of a task as it may seem. It's really as simple as that sometimes, right?
Right. It's simple, but it's hard, right? I mean, because I'm going to sit with you and, okay, what's the next move? Where are we going from here? Are we going to the ER and start there? Are we making a phone call? Who else do we call? And it's scary. I'm a professional, and if I get a call from somebody who says, I'm ready to kill myself, yeah, there's a part of me that's just like, oh, shit. Oh, my God. Okay. All right. Here's what we're doing. But that initial, and just like if you're out in the population and somebody just collapses, again, oh shit, okay, let me go do CPR. I'll have my moment for a nanosecond, then training kicks in and you do what you're going to do. And like I said, you don't have to do these things by yourself. If you feel that you're out of your league, and somebody, a friend, if you called me up and says, Mike, I've got a gun in my lap and I'm ready to kill myself. And I'm like, I'm in Washington State right now. I cannot get to you. Who can we call? And in the meantime, I'm dialing 911 and saying, this is what I got going on. I'm firing that Red Star cluster. Somebody needs to see it and just bring attention to it. And
Exactly.
that's the best thing. You're doing the best thing that you can do. And that's going to be helpful.
Exactly. And raising that the awareness, getting people's attention on the situation. Obviously you don't want to make it a spectacle and have, news crews lining up and down the street and making it a big production, but getting the right people, the professionals, the first responders there to help get the person to where they need to be if necessary, if you can't do that yourself, or somebody else who can help out, right? Just getting those people there and getting that awareness there is really key. For the listeners, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up in this episode because it just seems to fit. I had a guest on a while back who is from an organization called Hold My Guns, and they partner with local gun dealers and firearm dealers who will take temporary possession of somebody's gun for any reason at all. You could be going out of town on vacation and just don't want to leave your guns at home unattended, or you could be suffering from a mental health crisis, or somebody that and they will take possession of the firearms, no question asked. They'll lock them up securely, they'll store them for you, and they'll hang on to them for as long as you need it. And the reason why I bring that up is because in certain states, it isn't legal to just give a gun to somebody else without going through a licensed dealer and all the things like that. There's legal issues involved, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the legal issues there are, but I do know in some states there are legal issues as far as transferring a gun from one person to another. So even if you did go to somebody's house and it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to take this gun for now, just until you are getting the help that you need, and then I'll return it to you, you may be exposing yourself to some sort of legal issue. So I'm bringing this up because there are people out there who are working to make this available. It's not nationwide quite yet, I don't believe, as far as the dealers that they have available, but things like this will take the legal liability out of the equation and make it possible for anyone to bring their guns to a safe, secure location for temporary storage. And I'll link to that episode and the organization's website in the show notes. But I wanted to bring that up because there are options out there for people who is like, okay, maybe I can't take a firearm from my buddy legally, and that's an issue, right? Or maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want to have guns in my house for whatever reason. Maybe you have small kids in the house, you don't have a secure place to store it, whatever the case may be. There are options out there, so you can look into that as well. So I just wanted to bring that up to the listeners so that they knew that there are options. So if you're like, oh, I don't want to go and help this guy because then what am I going to do with the gun? Right. Again, like we were talking about before, there are people out there who are there to help in these types of situations. So
that's a small hurdle. That's one that can get, overcome. And I think so. Let's say you and I, we're friends and we make that deal. I see you're a combat veteran, I'm a combat veteran. And I said, man, things are going really great in my life right now, but I want to make a promise to you and you to me that if things start straining and you recognize some things, and you're my buddy, you're my wingman, you're not going to, just come at me, half cocked and just, hey, just give me your guns. Let's make that agreement that we will take possession of each other's weapons if we get into that space. Here now in the calm of everything's going great. And then we continue to update and say, yeah, same agreement. Yeah, I like that. So if you have life struggles, just life, right? Family, job stuff, things from the past, and they start colliding. So, man, you've got a lot of things on your plate right now that for a lot of people, that looks like a way out. So remember our agreement? Yes. Yeah. I feel like I want to invoke that agreement and just hold your weapons and, let's get you somebody to talk to. What do you think? And ideally he goes, okay, Mike, you're my wingman, you're my buddy, I trust you, I love you. Yes, here you go. Now let's call up and let's find you a vet center or whatever it is we're going to do, right, and start going down that aisle. And then, oh man, you're doing this thing, everything seems to be going good. Here's the weapons back. Let's go shooting. Let's go whatever it looks like.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways.
And that's a great thing. And I would encourage a lot of the listeners, or all of the listeners out there, to do that when you're in that calm place like you're talking about, right? When things are not hectic and chaotic and people are ready to pull the trigger or take the jump off of the bridge. Before you get to that point, have a plan in place. I mean, we did that all the time in the military. We had plans for our missions. We had contingency plans. If this happens, then we'll do that. We planned everything. Why not plan for something like this? I mean, especially when you look at the statistics and you see just how many military veterans and first responders are taking their own lives across the country over the last 20 plus years. It's crazy to think that, oh, we're all just going to be fine. Let's just not think about this. Why wouldn't we have some sort of plan in place to get the help that we need when we need it? Because eventually, unfortunately, it may happen where somebody that you know and love is at that point. And of course, we all want to be there to help them. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely that wingman in place.
Yeah, and gun suicide, the demographic for that is the retired white male, right? So that's our fathers, our grandfathers. Do we love them? Do we want to take care of them? Absolutely, we do. So let's, whatever it is that's going to motivate us to do that. And understand that this is, this epidemic of suicide is not a generation Z or whatever we're at now that we love to keep scoring on. It has nothing to do with that. All right. The commander of not CENTCOM, but Naval Admiral in Bahrain a couple of years ago, 3,500 hours in an F-18. This guy's a badass. Took his life. We had the chief of staff here at Fort Lewis, Green Beret. He didn't take his life, but he went off the rails, and he's sitting in the county jail right now, looking at 10 years for holding his family hostage. Human beings. It's human beings. My son's unit, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, over 50 suicides since their 2008 tour. To include Clay Hunt, who was the namesake of the Clay Hunt Act to increase psychological assistance in the VA, signed under the Obama administration. Clay was my friend. We were in Team Rubicon together. He's my son's friend. He was my friend. So it's human, not generational. We love to beat up on this new generation. That's what we do. I'll tell your listeners right now, for those of you who have not gone onto a military base since you've been out, I was taking a course at Fort Lewis in the summer, and Seattle had the distinction of having the worst air quality in the world that day because of all the wildfires that we had around here. Now, how we were worse than China or India in this, I don't get it. I don't believe it, but suck it, China. We were number one that day. And I had to go on to Fort Lewis, right? And it was like super hazy. I mean, it was smoke. You could just taste it, right? But I saw soldiers out there running with these enormous packs on their back and formation runs around the airfield. There was a Black Hawk hovering and guys were fast roping out of it. There's Rangers, just doing sprints over here. I'm going, I don't know where all these people are getting this from, that our Army's soft and weak and woke. These guys out here are badasses. That's all I know. I'm getting tired just looking at them, and so it's not generational. And I say that the kids out there today standing on the wall for us, man, they're doing all right. I got their back. So if you're against them, go onto a base and tell one of them face to face you think they're soft and see what happens.
Right. It probably won't end very well for you. I think a lot of it is, just as we get older, we become those old grumpy guys that we don't like change. We don't like to see the new whatever trends are going on, and back in my day, all that kind of stuff. And so the new guys get a little bit of the hazing, but they'll be the old grumpy guys someday, and then the new guys at that point will catch their wrath probably too. So again, that's a human thing. I don't think that's a generational thing. I think
feel like it's more now though. I don't know why, but
maybe
I feel like it's heaped on more. But to your point, in the Marine Corps, you have graduations on Wednesday and Saturday from boot camp. And the old joke was, what does the recruit who graduated on Wednesday tell the recruit who graduated on Saturday? He tells them what it was like in the old Corps.
That's good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about this, and it's good natured, and I think it's needed. I just think a lot of people who probably haven't even worn a uniform or talking about the woke military and all that. They didn't look woke to me, or they woke at 4 a.m. so they could go run. That's what they did. So, kiss my ass and get out there and do it.
Mike, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Could you tell us where people can go to find out more about the Wingman Project and anything else that you might have going on?
Shoot, Tony Cope was the director. I wish I don't have this. I'm going to look at my phone real quick right now.
No problem.
As we do this. And Tony and Alyssa, they're gonna kill me because I didn't have this just ready. Myriad Video is the company, and you can do that myriad.video, and they'll pull up and they'll have some of the voicemails from the future self in that. And the one that was before was really good, and like I said, I'm really proud to have been a part of that one little piece that I was able to provide. But man, those actors and the crew was just amazing. And it was hot, man. It was so hot in North Carolina that day. Oh my God, it was hot.
Well, that's great. And I'll have a link to the video and to everything about it so that the listeners can check that video out, as well as some of the other organizations that you mentioned, Save a Warrior, the Vet Center, and Team Rubicon. I'll have links to all of that in the show notes as well, so that people who are wanting to check out the organizations to either get help for themselves or a friend or a loved one, they can check that out pretty easily. So Mike, thanks again for taking the time to come on and join me. I really do appreciate your story and what you're doing currently to help out the veterans and first responders out there.
You're welcome. And let me just close with this. And I know that when we're in the middle of that storm and that despair and depression, we think that our situation is so unique and there's just no help for me. It's just no help for me. Well, I hate to break it to you out there in podcast land. You aren't special in that way. There is help for you. Whatever it is you're going through, there's somebody out there who's also going through it, and they're in a different stage of it, and they would love to be able to show you the way. Do the ranger thing, right? Follow me. So even if you think that, I guarantee there is some help out there. We just need you to put up your hand, because we can't just grab you. I wish we could, but that's kidnapping, and I don't want to go to jail for that. But so raise your hand, and man, we got your back. We got your back.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid to reach out, ask for help. We all do. Like, look into yourself, I think. And if any one of your battle buddies were out there and they were sounding the alarm saying that they needed help, would you drop everything to go help them? Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we all would. And if you're looking at yourself like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to these people or whatever, like, just if the roles were reversed, that person wouldn't be a burden to you. You would do anything you could to help them. Same thing goes for anyone else.
I love
trying
that.
to help
love
you.
that.
Right?
That's a great way to look at it. And if an old retired, beat up firefighter and Marine Corps Master Sergeant can do it, and I'm still here, I'm not ashamed. I'm bigger, faster, stronger, certainly bigger, but you can do it too, man. There's a great life out there for you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again, Mike, and I appreciate this conversation.
All right, brother. Be well.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.